Good afternoon, YouTube. It's me on the way, George Page, aka the Emperor of WMA Talk, coming to you live on YouTube. Well, tomorrow night we have a big event in women's mixed martial arts, and that is Invicta 51. Now, Invicta, as you know, is one of the only all women's promotions in MMA. You know, there's not that many of them. Most, it's been around for a little over 10 years. And it wasn't that long ago we just had an Invicta event this past November. And this is going to be the first Invicta event for the new year. So it's going to be tomorrow night, Wednesday, 9 o'clock. And I want you to check it out. I want you to support these ladies. I mean, there's a passion for the sport. So anyway, on the card is two title matches. Now, the first match is for the Invicta 135 championship held by Tanisha Tennant, and her opponent will be Toledo Bernardo. And then the second dairy fight, the co-main event is for the vacated women's 125 title, which was vacated by Karina Rodriguez. You know, Karina Rodriguez. She last year she decided to move over to Bellator, and now the title for 125 is vacated. Now, one of the fights on here is a small fight between two up and comers, by the name of Sayara Sayara Cannon, and I think it's Tanya Nayajar. And these ladies, this is going to be their debut. Both ladies have, I don't know much about them. I'm trying to find some stuff about them, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. Next up, we have here at 115, the Strawweight division, we have Fatima Klein versus Laura Gallardo. If I name her wrong, I'm going to apologize. Now, if you know, last time that Fatima fought, she fought, I think, way back in, was it early of last year, around about May, and that was Invicta 47, where she defeated her opponent by ground and pound. And with Laura, she hadn't fought since, I think, 2020. But she's been busy. She's been fighting with other organizations, such as Capacite, and she was also part of the Tough series where he was having, Julia Pena versus Amanda Nunes. That was going to be for the finals for the rematch between there for the 135 title in UFC. And she won in one of her fights and lost in the other fight. So, this will be her return to Invicta since, I believe, 2020. Next up, we have here the Queen of the North, that is Katie Saul versus a new up-and-comer, Rihanna Amanda from Brazil. And this is a atomweight. And this is, like I said, Rihanna Amanda is a new fighter. And like I said, I don't have much information on her. I know she's mostly fought out of Brazil, but, this is going to be her debut in Invicta. Now, Katie Saul's been in the game for quite some time. She fought some time ago. I think was like her last fight was I think it was Invicta 46, I believe, if I remember. That fight was 45, and she defeated her opponent, Tamika Jones, via armbar, and that was the first of last year. This was practically a year ago since she last fought on Invicta. She fought in Capacite last summer, so this is going to be a return, long way return since Invicta. And next up here, we have here is, Melissa Mesa Valencia versus Estrada Feria. And, this is going to be a 105. And, this is going to be debut for Estrada, Sandra, if I want to name her right. She's from Brazil, so this is going to be her American debut. Now, Melissa, she likes fighting in the Invicta Phoenix series for the atomweight contendership. And this was for a title shot for the atomweight division. She lost to the former champ, Jessica Del Bone, I think, in the early parts of the early rounds of the fight. But then she comes back and she fought a while back against Samantha. She actually fought against I think it was Samantha Sales in an event in last June. But after that fight with her, she fought against another opponent around about, I think, was 44. So that's been a while, and she won that fight by a split decision. You know, then we have here is you know Clara Guthrie, or her nickname. I forget what's her nickname. I want to make sure this is Clara. Um, you know, I'll get the name right. Clara Grizzly Guthrie up against her opponent will be Autumn Norton. And Guthrie her last fight was against Henny. I think it was Norton last fight was against Henny. She fought Henny back in actually what point she fought her, like I say, sorry. um Autumn for her last opponent, Maria Joke, back in Victor 48, and she defeated her opponent with with an arm hook and hammer fist, which means she ground and pound. And with Claire, her last opponent, she defeated her on her feet. I think it was by I believe it was by unanimous decision, and that was back in Invicta 50, and that was around about this past November. Now, next up we have Serena de Jesus versus Olga Ruben. Now, Serena, she fought against Lauren Mueller, a former UFC fighter, back in I think this past summer last year. She defeated her opponent by unanimous decision. And next to that point, she had a fight against Brittany Cloudy. And that fight went, I think, the distance, and I think it went to her in Serena's favor by unanimous decision. That was another one that Brittany Cloudy was having a good year there. Now, Olga Ruben, as you remember, fought a while back this past summer against Tanisha Tennant, and that was her debut. Olga Ruben used to fight in Bellator at 145. She lost a title shot against Julia Budd, and this is for the women's bantamweight title, where Olga lost to Tanisha by by decision. So next up we have here, Christina the Warhorse Williams versus Kathleen Souza. Now, as you know, also Christina is a former bantamweight Bellator fighter. She was cut from Bellator almost like 3 years ago, and she made a debut with Invicta probably almost just last year. She went against her opponent. She defeated her opponent by decision. And then her next opponent was no more maybe a couple of months later, where she submitted her by a rear naked choke. Now, originally she was supposed to fight Kathleen Souza for the vacated flyweight champion, but she had an injury and she couldn't fight, so she was out, so she missed the fight. Kathleen Souza got a substitute opponent. She fought that opponent and won by unanimous decision. So now this fight is for the title. Now you have the main event, and that is for the women's 135 title. Well, I say women's because there's only women's in Invicta. So, but hey, it's just sometimes a niche. And this is for against Tanisha Triple Threat Tennant versus Talita Bernardo. Now, as you know, wasn't that long ago, almost 2 or 3 years ago, just about, where Tanisha fought and Dana Wife Beaters the Contender Series, where she was pretty much screwed over by the judges against her fight against Daniel Wolf, a fighter who hadn't fought a year after that win, and even when she had her last fight, she got beaten. I mean, it's crazy. It just made no sense to me. So she, as you remember, Tanisha won her title in the Phoenix Series, and that's been about almost a couple of years ago. And her first defense was against Lisa Varizo. I can't say the name. I say Lisa, whatever. She won that fight by, I'm going to say, unanimous decision. Then she had her second title defense against Olga Ruben, and that fight went to as a split decision. She won that fight. I mean, it was a good, pretty fight. And Tanisha just better stand up compared to Olga Ruben. And next now the big question is, can she maintain against somebody, I guess, like Talita Bernardo, who's a good ground expert? Her last fight, she beat fellow Brazilian Yana Gadelha by basically short by choking out using I think it was just a choke out or it was Kimura, one of them, and she choked her out, and that was like in the second round. I saw that fight, and then she was up against another opponent, and that was Katharina Almenar, and she was also another Bellator fighter that left Bellator, that was cut by Bellator, and now she's fighting 135 in UFC in Invicta, and she won that fight by Kimura. So now she's 2-0 in Invicta. Even though she had too much of a UFC career, she's been dominant. But the big question is, if she does get through Tony Barnaro and defend her title for a third time, will Tanisha get an opportunity to go to UFC? Many of the ladies who are in UFC right now, most of them came from Invicta. And, and especially in 135, it's kind of been, 135 division is kind of stagnant. You got old fighters who they keep recycling. You just lost Sarah, McMahon, who went over to Bellator. And you still, just the title right now is kind of just being held by Amanda Nunes. As you know, just recently I saw they had a event, I think UFC 67, where we have now Peg Leg Pennington calling out the champ. And we can't remember how she sat on her stool saying she wanted to be done. We don't want to see that fight. No one wants to see a fight. But I think Tanisha can just, even though she may be not a high level fighter, but she's still a good fighter. And we need fresh blood over there in UFC and 135. They need fresh people. I mean, you still can't sit on people like Holly Holmes. She's supposed to be fighting Yana Kuzskaya. I call it the fight between the MILF and the Kruger. But I keep saying this. I'm going to keep saying this till, somebody can listen to me, hear to me. Shannon Nam needs to take over the women's division in the UFC. Now with this mess with Dana White beat her, someone needs to take over, because some of these women, they're going to go, they will get along, but many of these women have been in situations they were in abusive relationships. Someone like Shannon, many of these ladies who are in the UFC started out in Invicta. You have people like Tisha Torres, who's the wife of Raquel Pennington. You have people like Miranda Maverick, who's over in the UFC, who got picked up no more before she got a title fight against Vanessa Porto. There's a long list of women who was in Invicta, in UFC, that came from Invicta. So I think Shannon Nash should take over the women. And Dana should be suspended. And you still have Sean Shelby and McMahon. They can take care of the day-to-day stuff, But I think some of the ladies wouldn't mind having Shannon being over them. She can just settle the fights, be there for ceremonial stuff, and even recruit women. I think she can bring in something that the UFC needs. They need to expand their women's division. I mean, we just had a fight a while ago where we had a fighter dropped out because of issues. And I might talk about that. I will talk about that situation that happened this past weekend. But like I said, Shannon Nav needs to take over the women's division for the UFC, and Dana White should be suspended, because he's going to have some problems. There's going to be some states that are not going to willing to give the UFC a fighting license as long as Dana White sits as the president of the UFC. Because they're going to, like I said, there's a lot of strong women's groups, and there's some states who are a little bit more progressive. So he's mostly going to work out of the states that are more or less progressive. But still, those states who are more progressive have a bigger fan base, and there's a lot more money there. But anyway, check it out. Tomorrow night, it's going to be on Access TV if you watch cable at 9 o'clock. If you're like me, I'm on, my computer a lot more. You can watch it on YouTube. They have a YouTube network. And also, they're also going to be on Facebook. So I'm going to leave the link for the YouTube channel in the description. You can check it out. Support women in MMA. Support people in martial arts. And also, send a letter to ESPN. Tell them to suspend Dana White for at least a year or more. And let Shannon Nair take over for the women's division and help build that division up. Maybe do some more recruiting. Better fighters. Anyway, it's me, always George Page, a.k.a. the Emperor of WWE Talk. Like, don't subscribe. I'm out.